Hi, welcome to Jamestown Settlement in our recreated Paspahegh town. My name is Frank Hardister, and we're going to be talking about processing deer skins. The white-tailed deer was the largest herd animal available to the tribes, and one of the resources that they're getting from the animal is the hide itself, and it can be processed into many different things, everything from lacing to lash stone tools to wooden handles, or making clothing, or making blankets. You can tan it with the hair on or the hair off. It all depends on what you're doing. So today we're going to talk about some of the basics of tanning a deer skin. And I'm going to be honest with you, you talk to 20 different people who do this, you'll probably get 20 different answers. So I'm going to be honest with you, we're going to kind of look at it the way I do it myself. We know the Powhatan are using deer skins, obviously, because the English describe it, but their processing of the deer skin is a little different than what we do here on site. Based on some of the documentation we have in terms of hair removal, it sounds like the Powhatan, as well as the natives in North Carolina, are using a technique called wet scraping, where they're soaking the hide in water, and then, as the English describe, using a dull knife, they're scraping, pushing the hair off to de-hair it. But what we'll be talking about is something that during regular times we allow our visitors to help us with, and that's dry scrape the hide, where after we finish the fleshing process, which we'll talk about, we'll stake it out in a frame, stretches out nice and flat, let it dry, and then start scraping the hair off the hide. What we've got here is kind of an array of tools that you would be using in this process. Some are made out of stone, like the knife here. Some are made out of bone, like the awl I just dropped. So you can see that's been ground down to a point. And this is also a fleshing tool. You can see it's a large elk bone, and it's been hollowed out in the center, and it'll be used for pushing the flesh off of the skin when you start removing this. And also this is a scraping tool for scraping the hair off the hide, which we'll talk about later. But also a lot of things that get overlooked with the process is these little guys right here. These are just basically stone flakes that were driven off during the process of, say, making another tool like an axe or an adze or a scraper like this one. And the thing about these is that these are super sharp, because they are flaked off, or they're struck off of the stone, so they shear off to a very sharp edge. And these are great for cutting things, like if you have to trim the deer skin for a certain shape or anything like that. The knives are good for maybe cutting rope and stuff, but for really cutting the skin or anything like that, stone flakes. I mean, you can clean an entire deer just by using a stone flake that are that sharp. The other thing I want to go ahead and let you know, I am wearing rubber gloves today because while I'm pretty sure the hides I'm working on are clean enough, I don't like to take that chance. So that's what I'm doing today to protect myself. Another tool that I'll be using to show you how this works is just a basic iron bar. It's kind of got a dull edge on the end of it, and again, we'll talk about more of the process when we get over there. So, now we're going to talk about the deer skin. What we've got is a deer skin that obviously has already been removed from the animal, and I do want to throw a thank you out to the hunters that donate hides to the museum so that we can teach you about how this stuff is done. But you can see this is basically, you know, the way it's shaped. And what we're going to focus on is the other side, like I mentioned earlier. And as you can see, there's a lot of meat still left. There's some connective tissue left. There's also some meat still attached. So the thing is, you've got to get all of that stuff off, because if you don't, it can damage the skin, but it can also, you know, make it smell bad and that sort of thing. So you want to be able to get all that off. So using the fleshing tool, say if we were going to use this one needs to be a little bit better edge on it. You're basically taking this and pushing the hide, pushing the skin off. And you can see it, you know, coming off like that. So when you get down to that nice clean looking skin right there, that's how you know you've got it. So I'm going to take the iron bar and just work a section so you can see how this is going. Again, you're pushing the skin off. You're not cutting anything. So you can see how. So you see that, then you get all this little connective tissue. And you try to get that off as much as possible. You know, again, using the bone fleshing tool, you know, if you have a particularly tough spot to get to, you can take the flake and cut any troublesome spots away. I mean, give you an idea how sharp that is. You can see that cut I made right there. So they are very, very sharp. What we've done, we've already fleshed the hide, which, as you remember, means taking as much of the fat, as much of the meat off of the skin as possible. And what we've done now is taken that hide and put it in a frame. Now, the reason you're putting it in the frame is really to stretch it out flat, so that makes it easier for you to work. Again, we're doing the dry scrape method. I know we talked about the wet scrape method earlier. So what we're going to do is start scraping. You can see I started a little bit before you got here. Can give you a little bit of an idea of what we've done, but the tools that you're going to use to do this are right over here. We've got different types. For doing this, sometimes you can use something as simple as a oyster shell, or you can use a stone scraper like this one, or if you've had contact with Europeans, we've got a steel scraping blade, and all of them are effective, and we'll get the job done. So what I'm going to do is go over here, take all this stuff with me, and kind of show you how this works. So the first thing we're going to start out with is the oyster shells. The edges of the oysters can be very sharp. You can also abrade them against a stone to make them even sharper. And so, the purpose of this portion is to remove the hair, as well as the epidermis layer of skin. If you've ever seen a piece of cowhide, or leather purses or bags or gloves or something, there's a shiny side and a suede side. The shiny side is where the epidermis has been left on, and the shiny side, or the suede kind of side, is the part that would be next to the animal. So what we're doing is we want to get down to that layer. So not only are you taking the hair off, you're also taking that epidermis layer of skin off. So again, remember, you're not cutting the hair off, you're scraping it off. And it's important that you keep the tool at this angle. You don't want to work like that, or try to work up like that. We have a fixed frame. What I really like is movable frames that you can turn it around. But that was the stone. This is steel scraper. That was just a piece of iron or piece of steel that I've sharpened and lashed to a handle. And again, that same motion. And that's what you want to get. So what you would do is do the whole hide that way. Bear in mind when you get close to the lashings, that's really thin. So if you're using something really sharp like a steel or a stone, be very careful because you can pop those out. What we got here, this is the other side of the hide. This is the flesh side that would be part, next to the animal. And you see how we got all that meat, all that fat off. For the treatment for this side is you have to break up that membrane. And then there's some people that are meticulous enough, they will scrape every inch of that off. Me, I tend to, if I get it good and broken up, that's good enough for me, because what you're doing here is you're opening up this side to make the tanning agent, in our case, the brain matter solution, allows it to soak in more consistently throughout both sides of the hide. So again, you want to break that up so you can take your scraper, I'm using the steel one at the moment, and just really working that down. And sometimes it'll just peel like you see right here. But you can see how just going over with the scraper and take that membrane off. So we've already, the last part I left you with is we were scraping the hide, and we talked about removing the hair as well as removing the membrane. And I've got a hide right here that I scraped a while back. I will be honest with you, this is not the hide we fleshed in the previous scenes, but this is one I did a while back. But it gives you an idea of what you're looking for when you scrape the hair off the hide. You can see how kind of fuzzy it is. It's been scraped down to the dermis. Yeah, around the edges I did leave some hair, but that's okay because we're not going to have to worry about that. Also on the back you can see where I went over with my scraper and kind of roughed up the membrane down in here, because really that's what you want to do to make sure that the brain solution soaks in. And yes, I did say brains. We talked about that earlier, so no surprise. What we're going to do is take a pound of brains. This is food safe stuff that you can find in the grocery store, pork brains, and put them in a blender. It's just easy for us to do this. Native peoples would probably put them in a pot, mush them up, mix some water in it, and then put the hide in. But we're going to do this real quick. So I'm going to put this in here and give it a little bit of stir there. Take this off and put a little bit of water, just enough to top it off. Okay. Now, what we got is the things I'll liquefy with a little bit of water, and I'm going to take the hide and put it down in the bucket there. We're using a 5-gallon bucket for that. Take this and pour this down in it. And then I'm going to put in just enough water to go over the top of the hide. Probably let it soak for a while, then come back, swish it around in there a little bit, maybe take it out, wring it out, stretch it a little bit, and then put it back in, and then let it soak. What I'm going to try to do, probably put some bricks or rocks or something on top of that so that the whole hide is under the solution there. So when we come back in the morning here, we'll have our frame set up, because the way we're going to do this, we're going to put it in a frame to stake it, and we'll talk about that more when we get to it. But then we'll wring this thing out, put it in the frame, and then start staking it. See y'all in the morning. We're back out on site, and you can see I've got the same frame we used to scrape the deer skin. And what I'm doing now is, what I've already done is set it up to take the hide to be able to stake it. So all I've done is right now is just taken some cordage. You want something kind of strong. We're using sisal, but you can also, I've used parachute cord before. But you want something strong because it's going to take some abuse, and we'll need to hold the hide tight in place. So to start things out, I've got basically one rope here, one at the bottom, one on this side, and one behind me. And that's how I kind of started out, and then I've got some extra rope to fill in wherever needed as we start putting the hide in the frame. So now that we've got this set up, we'll go ahead and start wringing out the hide, and then we'll put it in the frame. Drying the hide can mean two different things. One for drying, put it in a frame to dry it out, to make it easier to scrape, and the other is to actually dry it, because the goal in this process right here is to remove the water but leave the brain matter in the skin, because what's going to happen is the brain matter is going to wrap around the skin fibers and keep it movable, make it soft. But we got to get the water out, or what it'll do is it'll dry back out into rawhide. So this is okay. There we go. So I'm just lay it over here on the stump. Roll it up. Try to get the wrinkles out of it. Okay, now we got it rolled up. Tool I'll be using for the process is a staking tool. This is basically an old mattock handle, where I have filed or ground the end of it into a chisel shape, so that'll make it easier to do that drawing step. But what we're also going to use it for is to wring out the hide. So I'm going to come over to the frame, and using one of the stands of the frame here, I'm going to take this and wrap it around, and hopefully I can tuck part of this hide in there together, so that it's kind of a ring. So what that does, take the staking tool and then just start twisting it. Again, try to hold this thing together. Okay, I'm putting this back in the frame, and basically using the same technique I would have used to put it in before we scraped it. I tend to hang it at the top first, and then you take one of the sides. You know, again, just putting a temporary line through. And sometimes it comes undone. Now the way I'm doing this is I'm going through the back of the hive, over the top of the frame, and pulling it. I leave it kind of loose early on, because then we'll go back and tighten it once we get to a certain point. But right now I just want it basically hanging in the frame. Now we're ready for the staking part. And this is one of those things that's pretty physically demanding, because what you're doing is you're working this hide until it's dry. And starting out, you may just want to just kind of gently push into the hide. I'm kind of concerned regarding the weather we have today. It's kind of cool and overcast. I would have liked it a little bit warmer and a little bit more sunshine. So let me give this a straight. And then you kind of get into this motion going up and down. Again, you're generating heat to dry that moisture out. And it's kind of a balance of how hard you press into it, because you don't want to pop through. Okay, so far we've been through pretty much all of the phases of hide tanning. We fleshed the hide, we scraped the hide, scraped the hair off the skin, we tanned it, we staked it, and now this is the last, pretty much the last step of the process, which is smoking the deer skin. And what smoking the deer skin does, gives it a little bit of color. It gives it that nice golden color. It also makes the skin a little bit more water resistant. So that way, if it were to get wet, it doesn't dry back into rawhide, like this. So pretty much what happens is the resins and the smoke get up, wraps themselves around the skin fibers, and again helps keep them from getting wet and sticking back together. As you can see, what I've done is I've taken the skin, kind of laced it up the side here to kind of form a bag. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put some matting around the bottom, to keep a crosswind off of the fire so that the smoke is going up. Okay, now you kind of got to see how I'm setting this up for the smoking process. Next thing I'll do is I'll take some mats, cover up the front, and we'll let it smoke for a few hours. So we will see.
see how we do. So, see you in a bit. Okay, we're back with the finished deer skin. As you remember, we were smoking it the last time. I actually did 2 smokings on it. I did one side for about 6 hours and the other side for about 6 hours using the setup we showed you with the the tripod frame and all of the mats and stuff covering it to kind of focus the smoke up through the hide. But as you can see, we've got a really nice gold color, and I did do I don't remember where I did it, but before we started I did the little nick with a knife, and looks like we got this color all the way through, which is good. So so for the most part this is finished. It doesn't hurt if over time it may need a little bit more smoking, whether you want to darken the color of the thing, or if you make it into a garment and wear it to kind of freshen it up, you might smoke it. Or if you make it into a bag, you can always smoke it more. Again, to kind of keep that water resistancy going there. So I still haven't decided what I'm going to do with this one. I've been thinking a new bag or possibly a knife sheath, but we'll see. But again, this is the finished product.